Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I invite everybody to join Council in O Canada. Thank you, everybody. I'm now going to give the Land Acknowledgement. In 1820, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the British Empire. Soon, they were helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here too. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their Treaty 22 rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and Black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. In 1857, Ontario gave official recognition to Oakville as a town. At Town Hall, 160 years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability we have created. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome, just as our Indigenous hosts did. We offer everyone our founding story so everyone knows what we are part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Keep well, stay safe, and let us know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. Please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Thank you for your attention to those important words. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this meeting?
There are no regrets tonight.
Thank you. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. Council, I congratulate you on your wide-ranging ingenuity in blue and yellow motifs on your backgrounds and foregrounds tonight. I wonder if two of you would be good enough for a motion to confirm the minutes of the previous council meetings as listed in the agenda. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Giddings, thank you. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, seeing no objection, that motion carries. Council, we have no public presentations, but we could resolve into committee of the whole if we had a mover and a seconder. Councillor Knoll and Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries, and we're now resolved into committee of the whole. Council, you have 5 consent items tonight. Do you wish to speak to any of them? Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. Could I separate item 7.1, the temporary on-street parking program, please? And I think there may also be a question with respect to the Halton Court Services and the implementation of the ASC program.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
I'm sorry. Can I get 7.1 and 7.3 separated, please?
Yes, you can. Do I have a motion for the other three?
Sure.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the other three? There being none, they're carried. Councillor Adams, you have the floor for point 1 and point 2.
Thank you very much. With respect to the temporary on-street parking program, I forwarded to staff a number of questions with respect to the way in which the temporary on-street parking programs could function for the ongoing process of being able to make use of paid temporary on-street parking permits. So I guess it's really with respect to what's on page 25 of the agenda, or page 3 of 6 of the report. And in particular, questions with respect to how that program would work, where people are making use of parking that might get in the way of winter clearing operations, or in a further question with respect to how do we view the apron of a driveway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to try and help out Councillor Adams. With respect to, I think there were a couple of questions there, Councillor, and I'm just trying to make sure I capture them all. But for wintertime snow removal, some of the criteria for obtaining a permit would suggest that in certain circumstances, certainly in large-scale snow removal operations, we would cancel the permits for the period of that snow removal operation. Which would be the one answer. And certainly we rely on residents advising us of those issues. If cars don't move and after the fact there are snow clearing issues, we'd ask residents certainly to advise us of those issues, and we'll make sure that our roads and work staff are able to come in and clean that up. And if there are any issues with the vehicle still being around, we can make sure to contact and deal with those issues on the one-off circumstances that they exist. I would say that this program has been in place now for quite, I believe, about a year, and we've had very few concerns with that, even with some of the snow events we've had. So it's been very successful in that area. The other question I believe you had was with respect to the boulevard area, the apron of the driveway, and how that's used. Am I correct in that question, Councillor?
I think the question from the constituent was really, when we're issuing temporary parking permits through this program, do we consider in any way whether their vehicles are accommodated on their driveway, or do we count the apron as part of that program? How does that line up?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Adams, we wouldn't make that decision. The program is open to use by anybody on the street. So if they chose to avail themselves of the program and park on the street, we wouldn't go in and determine if they could have had those vehicles on their apron or if they could have fit them on their driveway. They would just be using the program itself to park on the street. Again, there is an option in the program if streets want to opt out. There's a process to do that if it does become a problem over a period of time.
Thank you very much. And then the last question I have on this topic is with respect to the paid temporary on-street parking permit program, where we have vehicles that might be on the street for longer periods of time, say at least 30 days, but maybe an entire year if people continue to make use of the program. Can we or will we require the temporary on-street parking permit owners to put on their front dashboard a piece of paper saying that they've got a permit from the town, so that neighbors understand why it is that they're not receiving tickets, or that they shouldn't call in on their neighbors even if it's annoying them, or that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to Councillor Adams, thank you for the question again. We did get away from permits on dashboards for many reasons in the past. Number one, it's a waste of paper. Often people get confused and put the wrong paper on, and it just becomes an unnecessary piece of 1980s and 1990s technology that we used for many years. Now it's all done electronically, so there's absolutely no need for that, and that does add a step that's unnecessary for the customer, the resident. What we are working on moving forward is better communication. So if people do make contact Service Oakville and officers are responding to these issues, we're working on some two-way communication that would actually advise them that the vehicles in question had a permit and they were able to be there.
Great. And then the last thing I'd ask is, can you clarify, I think maybe this is my second to last question, but firmly my last question. Can you clarify how the process would look for determining whether a particular street or area would not allow for the paid parking permit program?
Through Mr. Mayor, I see Hanya Ellison is on the call now, so I'll let her take that question.
Thank you, Jim. Through you, Mr. Mayor, with the opting out, we would request a petition from the street that shows significant support that they do not want to have permit parking on their street. Staff would then survey to ensure that we have an independent response and that consultation has taken place. And then that street would be listed as not being available for the paid temporary parking.
Great, thank you very much. So that would allow, for example, a particular block to choose that they don't want to be part of the program.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't think we would go a small block area. We would have to look at a fairly big area because it makes it difficult if we're doing small blocks or small segments of roadway. So we would have to look at a broader area because it'd be making quite difficult if, one block was not, but the second one was in like alternate blocks type of thing. So we would have to look at sort of a continuous segment of roadway.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that you guys have done on this. As you've noted in the report, the vast majority of the permits that are issued have not been a problem and have been a benefit to the local residents. And so I support its continuation, but I look forward to the ongoing work you've got going to try and improve the system.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Can I put you as moving this when I call the vote on it?
Yes, sir. And I think I see Councillor Chisholm's hand up for you.
I do too. Thank you for your help. Councillor Chisholm.
Through your worship, Hanya, thanks very much for the report. Just for clarity, with an opt-out, they have to be 70% opt-out, a 70% calculation. Is that correct?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we're looking at a 75% threshold for parking permits. That was our threshold if we were opting in. And so we're looking at the same threshold for opting out. So we see that there's significant support for the change of how long vehicles can park because it would change how the road would potentially operate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. All those, is anyone opposed to the motion by Councillor Adams on 7.1? Seeing none, that's carried. And Councillor Adams, you have the floor for your next separation, the Halton Court Services.
It was item 7.3, the Halton Court Services Business Plan and Budget. Within that report, there's some note about the ASC program and how it would be impacted by court services. Could staff clarify that? There's, I think, a little bit of confusion about what impact that has in terms of when ASC can get off the ground and get working.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Mr. Van Heiden, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
Perfect. So that report outlined some of the concerns that Halton Court Services would have in implementing it. Unfortunately, I don't have any more information than that other than the fact they raised a concern in their business plan. But if there's something more specific, I can try to follow up directly with them if that would be okay.
Yes, that would probably be helpful to council and to the community at large. Just with respect to the report on page 48 and within the business plan itself, it mentions concerns about ASC not being able to proceed unless it's under the AMP program. And so I wondered if you can clarify whether that's going to have a going to cause us to be held back with respect to our ability to light up the ASC cameras once they're installed.
We can certainly follow up with them on that.
Councillor Adams, Director Stevens may have additional information for you. Director Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Through you to Councillor Adams. The ASC program and the capacity of the court system has always been a matter that we've been watching very closely. We do know that there are capacity limits there, and that's why we've been always pushing for the administrative monetary penalty system as the way to process the tickets through ASC. We are participating on the working groups with MTO and the Ministry of the Attorney General to move that forward, and we understand that it is coming later this year. Our last update is that they are looking at summertime for that, which is in line with what we reported to the Budget Committee. Based on the limitations in terms of capacity at the Joint Processing Centre and with the court system, we had indicated in our budget reports that we would be limiting the number of tickets that we could issue through the ASC cameras.
And so this continues to be in line with those discussions that we had earlier about the ASC implement.
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Can I put you down as the mover of this when we get to it? I note that there are other questions. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Giddings and then Councillor Ilger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the report talks about the possibility of overwhelming the court system, which we have enough challenges and pressures as it is now. We don't need to add to it. Is there any route that leads us to losing the least amount of money in the processing of this? Obviously, the public's going to feel that this is a great revenue generator through automated speed enforcement. Is there any route that allows us to truly minimize the costs? Is it AMP, or is there more competition coming? I'm just curious.
Through you, Mayor Burton, the AMP process is the process that we feel would have the least impact on the costs of the program to Oakville taxpayers. It will not be a revenue generator. It is a program that does come with a net cost, but we feel that the cost is mitigated through the AMP program, and that's again why we've recommended that we delay our start until that process is in place for automated speed enforcement tickets.
Thank you for that. And is that because there is a sole source, or we have to deal with a certain company that pulls the data, provides the information for us?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, the tickets are all processed through the Joint Processing Centre, which is run by the City of Toronto, and we have entered into a contract with them. That is the only processing centre option that is available to municipalities in Ontario who want to enter into the ASC program. Similarly, there is one vendor that we are dealing with, and again, we have been working with them on entering into that contract. The City of Toronto procured that. There was a joint procurement process, and we were able to join in on that. But there is one vendor that we can work with for the cameras.
And it's fair to say that's not likely to change anytime soon.
Through you, Mayor Burton, no, it's a 5-year contract, so we are tied into that timeline. It has started, the contract, because Toronto has obviously launched their program already, but for the length of that contract, we are locked into that arrangement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Ilger.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Similar to, I think it's already been asked, but it was in August of 2021 where the Minister of Transport said that in the very near future, we were going to be able to get the AMPs for vehicle-based offenses. So the very near future, I guess, is that going to happen not before the election? Is there a chance that that could happen? I'm talking the provincial election, Jill.
Through you, Mayor Burton, the current timeline that we've been provided with is June 2020. too, so that does align with the timeline of the provincial election. So,
yeah. So right after the election, that is when all this we're going to get what we want then to get it help us out. That's the plan.
through you, Member, and that's the current timeline that we understand the group is working towards to put this in place.
Oh, that'll be interesting to watch that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion by Councillor Adams on this item? Seeing none, that carries, and that should bring us forward to our 5 discussion items tonight. And the first of those is a notice of motion that was introduced last month by Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Duddick, and it is now in order. I give the floor to Councillor O'Meara and then Councillor Duddick.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I may have lost my seconder on this. I don't see Councillor Duddick on the Zoom tonight, so I may need another council colleague to jump in here and second this if that's okay. But if you don't mind, I'll just speak to it now. I mean, I won't read it again. For anybody out there who knows, who pays insurance, whether it's car or home or these sorts of things, knows what we're dealing with here. As a municipality, we have essential services that we're obligated legally in order to provide, and insurance costs are just skyrocketing. Our colleagues at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario have been on this for a number of years now, and they've been doing great work and really trying to lobby the province who understands and again, who has said that they're going to take steps in order to provide a better legal framework for us to operate in. Otherwise, we're just not going to be able to continue to afford to offer the services that we do for the insurance prices we're paying. So this is just calling on the provincial government to bring in a regulatory and legal framework that allows municipalities to afford those costs, allow us to continue to bring forward the services that we're mandated to do, but do so in a way that we can afford to. And I thank everyone at our colleagues at AMO for putting this together, and thank everyone for the time.
All right. Have we restored Councillor Duddick from whatever technical difficulties took her off the screen? I don't actually.
Your Worship, I had a call from Councillor Duddick. She sends her regrets. She unfortunately had to go to the airport this evening to pick up her husband. I think they're having some challenges with family in Western Canada. So that's where she is tonight. So I send regrets. My apologies. I didn't do it earlier in the meeting, but that's the situation. I'd be happy to second Councillor O'Meara's notice of motion.
Well, thank you, Councillor Chisholm, for stepping forward to substitute for your colleague. Would you like to speak? Do you have anything to add that you'd like to say?
I guess, yes, Your Worship. I'm glad this has come forward. I know it's been an issue and a challenge with Ontario municipalities, but what it does, it also drills down to our community organizations and recreation. And I use that background extensively in my past years of working with the municipality. Some of these small organizations can't afford the insurance, and it's becoming detrimental to their operations. And some of them, 30, 40% of their budget is based on insurance costs. So I fully agree and I fully support Councillor Mayor's notice of motion on this, and I'll just leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chisholm. Are there other speakers? I see none, so I'll ask if there's any objection to the motion. And I see none. So I'd like to ask the clerk to record this as a unanimous decision, and if you would treat it as a recorded vote, therefore. Is that all right with everybody? Thank you. The next item for discussion is the cannabis legislation review. Staff are available for questions, and the motion is that the report from Municipal Enforcement Services be received. And I believe I just saw evidence that there might even be a presentation if you want it. What's your pleasure, Council? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've reviewed the report and I'd be happy to move the receipt of the report as recommended.
Thank you. Is there objection to the motion? Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a question of staff. I guess, is this the new yearly ritual though? As long as we don't decide to opt in, we just have to get a report every year allowing us the opportunity to opt in? Or, I mean, how does this procedurally work sort of moving forward here?
No, Councillor, there's no procedural requirement to do it every year or at all. However, the last time we looked at it, on a motion from you amending the last action, we undertook that we would review it again.
Okay, so we're done then. I guess the question is, if the will of council at some point decides we could just request a report to opt in again, I guess that would be the procedural tools then, Your Worship?
Actually, you have also the tool of a notice of motion. You don't have to start with a request for report. There's just two different ways to start.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I don't mind if can I speak to Councillor Adams' motion to receive right now?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. I'm, you know, again, I've made a couple of comments in the past that I don't think this makes or breaks us either way. I think the sky hasn't fallen in the municipalities that have had it in, and you know, I don't think from maybe towing the line with my council colleagues that the will is there to overturn this right now. So I won't rock the boat at this point, but I do believe that you know, we should just be moving forward and turning the page on this and just, you know, letting it operate like any other business that we have. But I digress on that. But I just thought it was important to express my views out there, and I thank you for bringing this forward again, and thank you to staff for putting that information forward. I think it speaks volumes to what we're talking about. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Giddings. Councillor Chisholm first.
Thank you, Worship. Just for procedural process here, with respect to my understanding, and maybe I can be corrected by the town clerk, this issue has come up and we voted on it. The term of office, this would not come up again until the next new term of office of council, or would this just keep coming up year to year? I think I just wanted to have clarity as Councilor Mayor has brought this up, and I just need to have clarity on the procedural.
Procedurally, Councillor, any member of council can bring it up anytime a member wants in any term by either requesting a report, which would surely generate a staff report making a recommendation one way or the other, and council could then make a determination. And same provisos, any member of council can bring a notice of motion to opt in, and that would be in order, and council would vote and make a decision. So council is free at all times to consider a matter, and it can consider a matter and make a determination to stay out. Council could vote to stay out, which we haven't done this term, and then reconsider with the necessary number of votes. So council, within those limits, is always free to make decisions. So I hope that's helpful to the public. Councillor Giddings, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was exactly my question, making it as easy as possible for the public that may be watching can understand. The receipt of the report, I think a number of people were perhaps expecting there to be a vote yes or no, but if you could provide a little more fulsome explanation, perhaps, that the receipt of the report doesn't change the process that Oakville is under, and that it could change in the future.
You've summarized it well, Councillor Giddings. Oakville has not opted in to cannabis stores for many reasons which we've covered before. And any time, including tonight, that council wanted to opt in, council could move a motion on the basis of this report to opt in. Once council opts in, council can never opt out. So you never lose your ability to opt in, according to the province, but once you're in, you can't get out. As I joked once, it's like the Hotel California.
Oh, California. Thank you very much.
You can check in anytime you want, but you can never leave. I'll call the vote on, wait, did I get I had a motion from Councillor Adams to receive. Is there any objection to that motion? Madam Clerk, there is no objection, and that carries. Now we turn to a very constructive item, and that is the new strategic plan for the Oakville Public Library, which in many surveys shows up as our most beloved municipal service, or at or near the top. We have a presentation by Tara Wong, the CEO of the Oakville Public Library, and I should mention that Councillor Knoll serves for us as the chair of the Oakville Public Library. And Councillor Knoll, before Ms. Wong begins, I wanted to congratulate you on the Disney-like mission and vision statement. I say they're Disney-like because they're short and sweet, and Disney World is the penultimate example of the short and memorable vision and mission statements. The vision is to be the happiest place on earth, and the mission is we make people happy. If only municipal visions and missions could be so simply worded. Ms. Wong, welcome. Council looks forward to your information and your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm excited and grateful to be here to present OPL's new strategic plan to you. I'm going to hand it over briefly to, as Mayor Burton just stated, to Chair Knoll for some initial comments.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you, Your Worship, for those comments and your observation about our new strategic plan. I do want to, first of all, start with a big thank you to the community for their participation in developing the strategic plan. These things aren't done in a vacuum, and there certainly was considerable consultation done and lots of feedback provided by members of the public, including members of council. So we're very grateful for that because we really wanted to make sure that we incorporated the public's interests and dreams for their library system. So that's the most important thing I wanted to say up front. We were really anxious to revamp our mission, vision, and values to reflect the ongoing progress or the ongoing evolution of libraries in our society. Gone are the days of it being a simply repository of books and magazines and newspapers. It's gone to a point where libraries are not just about consuming information, but it's about producing content, and it's about providing community services and connectivity to people within the community. So we've really seen the evolution of libraries, and we wanted to make sure that our strategic plan for the next 3 years would carefully reflect that, which again is based on the desires of our community, but also the evolution of library services. We're super excited. I can't tell you how excited the board is about the execution of this plan. We spent a lot of time really crafting the details for this plan. I think we drove the poor staff crazy going back and forth, just trying to make sure that we really succinctly identify what it was that we wanted to convey in our strategic plan. So I'm not going to spend much more time on that because Tara can give you all the important details. But before I hand it back over to Tara, I do want to acknowledge the wonderful contributions of our colleague Janet Haslett-Thiel, who's also on our board, Andrew Cashman, who is a member of our board of directors, Stephen Bright, Bill Smith, and Susan Finelli. We've had a couple other members that have stepped aside this year who weren't participating in the strategic plan necessarily, but we have a terrific board Once again, we're very proud of the strategic plan, and I'll hand it now over to Tara so she can give you the details. And I'm sure Tara can handle most of the questions, but if there's any questions that I can maybe elaborate on at the end of the presentation, I'm happy to do so. Once again, thank you, Worship, and over to you, Tara.
Thanks, Chair Knoll. As Chair Knoll indicated, one of the clear directions that the board provided to us early when we started our strategic planning design process was that they wanted significant community engagement. So next slide. We worked really hard to connect with community members. And again, I'll second Chair Knoll's thank you to the members of council who participated in our stakeholder interviews. So we did undertake our community consultation through a number of different streams. We did a wide-reaching survey where we reached over 2,600 participants, which we were extremely pleased with. We held over 20 plus stakeholder interviews. We had staff workshops, as well as focus groups. It is definitely a priority of OPL that we're committed to keeping the community at the heart of everything we do. And we really wanted that to be central to our strategic plan. And we definitely believe that we have attained that. So basically, we took everything that we gathered from our community consultation, the interviews, the statements, the answers to our questions, and we really worked with the board to revamp our mission, vision, and values. That was one of the other things that the board was very clear on, that they wanted to take our mission, vision, and values that we had implemented back in 2016 with our last strategic plan and kind of update them to where the library is now. Next slide. And so we're very excited of what we came up with. Our updated vision, connecting people to what inspires them. Our updated mission, OPL brings together people, information, and ideas to enrich lives and build healthy communities. And our 6 organizational values, which we stand behind and are behind every decision that we make: equitable access, curiosity, belonging, lifelong learning, intellectual freedom, and of course, exceptional service. So we're very excited to have these in place and have them really express who we are and where we're going as an organization to fully support Oakville and all Oakville residents in achieving their fullest potential. Next slide. So then we also took comments like these. I just pulled out a couple that we received from our stakeholder interviews as well as through the survey. And we use them to craft 4 strategic pillars. And I'm going to go through each of those pillars and kind of talk about initiatives that we're working on this year that will bring those strategic foundational pillars to life. Next slide. So our 4 pillars are expanding our reach. For those of you who got a chance to read some of the comments, one of the ones in there is that apparently Oakville Public Library is the best kept secret in Oakville. So expanding our reach really speaks to how we can move from being the best kept secret to one of the first places people think of if they have an information or a recreation need. Promoting digital discovery is another one of our pillars. We knew the role that the library played in bridging the digital divide prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic definitely showed us where our gaps were. It definitely showed us a willingness of community members willing to try explore new technologies that maybe they hadn't in the past. And how can the library kind of bridge that with them? Of course, investing in staff to deliver exceptional customer experiences. And then finally, enriching lives and building healthy communities, which is essentially what libraries have been doing. But how do we bring that to that next level? So I'm just going to go quickly through each one of those pillars and really speak to the initiatives that we have planned for this year, as well as some future ones over the next 3. So next slide, please. So expanding our reach. As I said, this is really about how do we bring our resources and the depth and breadth of our resources to the community and make them aware of what we're offering them. So we're going to do that through a number of different ways this year. One way we're really quite excited about is we're introducing baby welcome kits through a partnership with Health and Healthcare. We're looking to launch that in June this year. That will be a partnership that will put a baby welcome kit in the hands of every newborn into Oakville that will allow them to have a curated kit that promotes and supports healthy early literacy, to really set these families up for success and start them thinking about early literacy right from the get-go. So we're very excited. Halton Health is extremely excited to pilot that with us. So look for more information on that. We're also looking to expand our Opl Express locations. Currently, we have 3 of them. We have one at QEP. We have one at St. Luke's Community Center, as well as 16 Mile Sports Complex. They have been significantly successful. So we are looking to expand those to other areas in Oakville that may be underserved by a community branch. So we're excited to be doing that. And we're also going to introduce a customer retention plan. So how do we connect better with our current users, our future users, but also our lapsed users, and really help them understand what the library has to offer them. Somebody may come in looking for a book and not recognize the programs and services and other resources that we have. So how do we encourage them to explore everything that we have to offer? Next slide. So promoting digital discovery. So we're definitely looking to expand our digital literacy programs. We've done that throughout the pandemic, but there's definitely been ones that people have been asking for that we just haven't managed to get to. There's a lot of interest in how to engage in TikTok or some of those other types of apps by seniors and other different demographics that aren't traditionally on that. So how do we assist them in understanding the language that is these trends? We're also looking at expanding our Wi-Fi hotspot and connection kit program. That was extremely successful for us in targeting isolated members of our community throughout the pandemic. And how can we continue to expand that program and really ensure that every single resident in Oakville has access to the internet? And we're also looking to continue to enhance our website. We launched a new website in June this year. It's a significant improvement over our last one, and we're very excited about it. But we will continue to enhance that. We're looking about how we can bring in multiple languages and how we can talk with different community groups about how we can continue to improve our website so that when people come to the website, they can find what they're looking for and really understand the different resources that we have available to them and make it as simple and easy as possible to reach them. Next slide, please. Staff are the backbone of the library. People come in every day and ask our staff really challenging questions. And so how do we make sure that our staff are ready and willing and able to answer those questions, to have that knowledge of the latest trends and technology? You know, right now, a lot of people are coming in asking for information about Russia and Ukraine, trying to understand the current world situation. So how do we help staff know how to deal with those questions no matter what's coming through? So we're working on a number of different areas to constantly keep staff up to date. We're also looking to further build on our diversity and inclusion training. Last year, all OPL staff went through the 4 seasons of reconciliation training through the First Nations University. And we're looking at how do we take that to the next level? Now that all our staff have a baseline for truth and reconciliation, how do we continue to grow that? Next slide, please. And finally, enriching lives and building healthy communities. This is, I love them all, but this is the one that I'm very excited and passionate about. We have a number of really fantastic initiatives related to this. We'll be launching in April a community conversation series where every month we're going to pick a topic that might be a bit challenging, might be a bit divisive, and how we can introduce speakers and workshops to really have civil conversation about these topics. We're starting with sustainability. In April, we'll be bringing on talking about food security, really working with our partners. So we're excited to launch that. So look for more information about that and how that will roll out in April. We're also looking at expanding our food and pet food shelves. Right now we have those at 3 locations, Central, Glen Abbey, and Clearview, and they are extremely well used. It is not unusual for us to refill our food shelf at Central multiple times in a day. We know that we're supporting between 30 and 60 families in the Oakville community who are facing extreme food insecurity, and we're partnering with different groups in the community in order to be able to grow that. So we're looking at adding freezers that introduce frozen food. and expanding to other of our branches to continue to support residents who may be suffering from food insecurity in their area. And also through our partnership with the Toronto Rock Athletic Centre, this year, I'm very excited to announce that we will be introducing an elder and residence program. So that is something that Marcus Logan, who many of you know, is currently working on. And I'll be providing more information on that exciting program as it rolls out later this year. So that, forgive me for, I know I talk quickly. It's a lot of information, but I'm really excited about the initiatives that we have in place, and we'll keep council up to date on all of those. Next slide. But that was my presentation, and I'd be delighted to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wong. You have a few, starting with Councillor Adams, Councillor Longo, and then Chair Knoll.
Thanks very much. I hope my sound volume is better. I understand from the clerk that maybe I needed to bring my mic closer or something, so hopefully it's okay.
It's always a good idea to get closer to your mic. In the professional broadcasting business, they recommend 8 to 10 inches away. So if you want to try that, that may help you.
Can you hear me now?
You can be heard better than you were being heard before, but not as well as everyone else.
Thank you for that. I'll work on it later. In any case, my question, Tara, is could you, you've got a slide there, and part of the program that you've outlined is outreach to groups of residents from different language backgrounds, or ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. And in particular, I recently had discussions with members of the Chinese community in Oakville, and whether their senior groups would be able to come into the library and host seniors days for their community specifically, or, you know, as an example, could they come in on a Tuesday morning, set up a table and host members of the senior community and help them access the library system in a way that would work well for them? Is that the kind of thing that we could work on?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, that's exactly the type of relationship that we're looking to forge with our community partners. Internally, we're not really equipped to deal with multiple languages, and so we really do rely on our community partners to help us create that bridge to those communities. So we do have a number of Chinese groups that we do work with, but if you have one that would be interested, absolutely get them in touch. We'd love to talk to them about those opportunities.
Excellent. Then perhaps offline we can have that conversation. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great presentation, Tara. Thank you for that. One of the things that you mentioned in your strategic pillars, which I think really resonated, given Glen Abbey's branch was renovated, the digital discovery. So one of the things that I thought was really cool was the 3D printing and being able to you know, kind of experience digital, different forms of digital. How has the public taken to the redesigned Glen Abbey branch? Because my kids actually do go there to study, and they find it a great place to study. But how has the reaction to the renovations that finished in 2009 been?
Through you, Mayor Burton. To be completely honest, they've been a little bit up and down. You will remember that we opened, I think we had our grand opening celebration January 28th, 2020. So right. It's been a bit rocky due to the pandemic. When we've had the opportunity to open our creation zone, it's been in high demand. It is really well used. I don't think we've had the opportunity to show it off the way we had intended when we originally reopened. But now that the restrictions are moving away, we're really excited to re-engage with the community and have them come in. And we are planning a number of really fantastic programs. We've been doing them virtual to this date, but we're really excited to bring people back in and really introduce them for use to the different technologies that the Creation Zone has, as well as the other spaces.
Yeah, no, duly noted on the footnote for COVID, because it obviously derailed a lot, which I probably should have mentioned. But no, I from my perspective and seeing it being open before COVID, I think so much potential there. And I think your strategic pillars really talk to kind of the evolution of how a library can be used and help the community in so many different ways. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longo. Councillor Knoll, or Chair Knoll, as we know you now.
Thank you for that. And I had put my hand up because I wanted to have a chance just to round out the presentation at the end. First and foremost, I want to apologize to one of my board colleagues, Pankaj Sardana, who has been an absolute anchor on our board for the last number of years. And I neglected to mention him. I should never get into listing names when I'm doing thank yous. I should just do broad thank yous, and because I invariably forget somebody, and it's usually my wife. The second thing I wanted to mention, I wanted to really emphasize something that Tara had touched on, and that is the experience during the pandemic. If nothing else comes out of the pandemic, positive, and there's not a lot that can come out of the pandemic that's positive, but one thing that did is understanding the level of importance the library has in our community, and also fine-tuning the programs that the library can offer and contribute to the community. It was a major piece. The staff did a phenomenal job pivoting to provide digital services for children, online activities, et cetera, to keep people engaged while we were all stuck at home. And it was an absolute perfect opportunity to develop the strategic plan with that, I won't say in the rearview mirror, but that experience in play sort of behind us, because it really helped us really refine some of the pieces of the strategic plan, incorporating the importance that we learned from that. I want to thank Tom for the suggestion about the Asian seniors groups. Those sorts of things, as Tara said, are exactly what we hope to see more of in our libraries, to engage everybody in the community, not just one group or another, but the entire community overall, and more of those sorts of opportunities that can be explored, the better. And it really is all about the last pillar that Tara talked about. The staff, and Tara also touched on this, our staff are fantastic. And the staff, I didn't mention before, the staff had a major role in developing and buying into the strategic plan. It's one thing to develop a strategic plan, but if your team aren't willing to execute, or if they're not able to execute, or they don't feel that any ownership of it, it's not going to happen. So Tara and her team were very careful to make sure that the staff understood it, bought into it, and provided feedback at all junctures. So this isn't just an imposition of the board's will. This is a collaborative relationship, collaborative amongst the board, the staff, and the public. So we're very proud of that. And the last thing I want to say is thank you to the council. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your investment in our library system. As the mayor mentioned earlier, we are usually either the first or second most popular service in town. I think it varies over the 2 decades I've been around town council, but we're certainly always in the top 2. And I think that, we're certainly well positioned to be firmly ensconced in #1 place, and that's one of our goals. But thank you to all of you. You've made a great investment in the library. Thank you for always remembering us, Tom and Budget Committee, when it comes to the budget allocation. Library services are important. They will remain important. And our strategic plan absolutely identifies the importance of the emerging role of libraries in municipalities and our society going forward. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for your questions, and onward and forward, onward for the next 3 years with a great strategic plan. Thanks, everybody.
Councillor Knoll, does that include a motion from you to receive?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Actually, you know what? Can I give the honor to Councillor Haslett-Thiel?
Councillor Haslett-Thiel can certainly have the honor. Is there any objection? Does Councillor Haslett-Thiel want to say anything before I declare the result?
With pleasure. It's a great board, and I think Chair Knoll's done a great job of summarizing how supportive we are of everything that the leadership team at OPL doing, and the frontline staff. They make it a pleasure to collaborate and build community. They are at the very essence of what great community is all about. So my pleasure to move it.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, I declare that carried. Council, that brings us to our not previously listed discussion item, 9.4, a verbal recovery update from the CAO. Madam CAO, you have the floor.
Mayor, can you hear me? Mayor and members of council, there is a report on your agenda that was distributed late. on some recommendations on moving forward with recovery in light of the regulations and orders of the province is changing as we move out, with the first order taking effect actually last week on the 17th, and then the one that is anticipated for tomorrow. The order is actually already out that looks at lifting capacity limits and lifting the requirements for vaccine or passport at various facilities. So the report outlines where we should be going next in terms of several steps in terms of opening up our own facilities. So for example, it deals specifically with opening up town hall so that the public has access into service Oakville and the ability to book our meeting rooms. Access into the broader offices of town hall are, of course, escorted in by town staff. But to have the meeting rooms available again for people to book is going to add a lot of opportunities to the community to gather for the events they have in the past. Some other recommendations here are that we will, sorry, I'm just looking down the recommendations itself, that we will, in our recreation centers, this is key, we will be following the provincial requirements of the order that has come out, and we will no longer require the showing of a vaccine passport at those locations so people have the ability. Masking will still be in place. The distance separation is still in place, which has some effect on capacity limits. While capacity limits are being lifted, the distance separation will create some issues, particularly in the change rooms. So that's the requirements that we're following, all the provincial requirements in our facilities within the town. So this report details those particular items that we're moving forward, and then some other items dealing with the return of the council chambers, the emergency order, that will delay a little bit longer until some more of the regulations or requirements of the province have been lifted as we move forward with returning back to a little new normal again in the world. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, Madam CAO, today the Premier was quoted as saying that he thought the mask requirement would be going away, quote, soon, unquote. And that led me to wonder if you had any information yet from the province on that. And I'll just wrap that inside the comment that the Halton Public Health Unit announced last week that Halton Public Health is planning to follow the Ontario guidelines rather than being stricter. And I just wonder if you wanted to speculate about masks and separation distance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have heard the same thing in terms of the masking requirements being lifted fairly soon. As you know, the mask bylaw that is in place for the region is in place till the end of April. But in speaking to the CAO, Jane McCaskill at the region, she had indicated, as the medical officer of health has, that they'll be following the provincial regulations when they come out. So the two pieces that really in the recovery report that hinge around the masks are the removal of the state of emergency that the town and all the other municipalities within the region and Halton Region have in place could be considered for removal because we're eliminating all those visible signs of a pandemic, and so we're sending an appropriate message by taking the state of the emergency off at that point in time. With the removal of the masks, it also opens up some opportunities for the council chambers. Along with that would have to come the distance separation so that we can fit everybody around the council table. So our intention, or what is outlined in the report and approved by the Recovery Committee, was that we would be dealing with a hybrid state of council once the masking bylaw comes off. So there's an opportunity for people to also participate virtually as well as in the council chambers, subject to that distance separation, understanding when that is being removed. It also gives us the opportunity then to begin to open up the chambers to the public as well, but still retaining that opportunity for the virtual attendance, because I think all of us have found that the opportunity to participate virtually has actually brought a fair number of people out whom potentially could not have attended without that virtual opportunity.
Thank you, Madam CAO. Council, before I turn to questions, I'd like to ask you to spend some time over the next couple of weeks, because I think these changes are going to come quickly, thinking about and imagining what a hybrid council meeting might look like. First, it's important to remember that the province has promised that the ability for members to participate electronically will be continued in a post-pandemic and endemic world. And this is interesting because before the pandemic, you know, this was something that couldn't be considered. So, so we will always have the option for a council member to participate electronically. You, if separation distances remain, may wish to think about how a hybrid meeting, that would be half of us here and half not, how the membership might be determined. And I have a suggestion for you to think on and reflect on. Each of the 7 wards, each pair of councillors in each of the 7 wards could decide between yourselves which of you would be at a meeting physically and which of you would be at a meeting electronically. And you'd each be free under the province's regulations on this matter to elect to participate electronically. But the idea is that you would decide between yourselves, if you both wanted to come, who would come while and if separation distances remained. So I hope that gives you something to think about, and variations and other ideas are of course welcome. So please turn your minds to that. Councillor Giddings, I see your hand, so you have the floor.
I appreciate the further details, Mr. Mayor. It answers a number of my questions. In terms of the public, will they likely be able to maintain that hybrid model as well, whether they decide to come in online or attend town hall?
Yes, sir. And while separation distances remain, if we admit the public to that hybrid treatment, they would, of course, have to maintain that separation distance. As the room fills up with people, though, you do run into concerns about the transmissibility of the virus through airborne means. And so council will have to decide how full they want the room to be. And so that's another thing to turn your minds to.
All right, I appreciate that. CAO Closey, you talked about having to maintain the 2-meter distance, and that would, I guess, lack of a better word, create pinch points, whether it be in reception or, as you mentioned, in change rooms. Just curious in terms of what the numbers look like. Is it broken down by gym, by the pool area, by whatever, or is it the lowest common denominator, if you will, in terms of change rooms?
If Commissioner Bell is on, she could, of course, address this question very effectively. My understanding is that the limitation on the distance separation is particularly relevant for the change room areas that are constrained space. In the gyms and those other wider open space areas, the distance separation doesn't really impact the capacity. You could return to normal capacity in those larger space areas.
All right, fair enough. And will these be discussions that the gyms and play areas and dance schools and so on will be going through as well as they open up to the public as well?
Certainly those discussions have happened at the town. Colleen's team has been well apprised of what we would need to put in place as these restrictions begin to come off. So those discussions have happened already, and we've identified any limitations within the recreation centers, which I suggest is predominantly the change room areas. That analysis has already gone through. I'm assuming every other group that offers those types of facilities would be going through a similar discussion, but that has happened now at the town. And we're ready to move out on March the 1st, tomorrow.
Good stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. For everyone's greater comfort, I can tell you that throughout the pandemic, ever since separation distances were recommended, we've had room capacity numbers posted at just about every room in Town Hall, illustrating that it can be done. And of course, our restaurants are doing similarly. Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also have a question for Commissioner Bell. For places like change rooms and smaller areas, is there any additional HEPA filters in those types of areas?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our facilities and construction team, as well as our recreation team, have been working in partnership to increase the quality of our air to a MERV 13 filter, which is hospital grade. So we are in the process right now of converting all of our buildings to either MERV 13s or equivalent. So that will be the case right across every town-owned facility. The other piece too is earlier in the pandemic, we also did a whole audit around air quality and optimized our existing systems as well. So the MERV 13 filter change is an enhancement above what we've already done.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina. Councillor Lischina, could I prevail upon you for a motion to approve the recommendations? Thank you very much. Council, is there any objection to the recommendations? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, I declare the motion carried. Thank you, everybody. Council, we now have another not previously listed item, and in this case, it's due to the late-breaking nature of the news, and that is the grade separation or underpass projects at Burloak and Kerr Street. And we have a verbal update from CAO Closey, and we have other information standing by if needed. Madam Closey, Madam CAO, Ms. Closey.
Mayor and members of council, we did want to provide you an update on the two critical grade separations in the town, both the Burloak as well as the Kerr Street grade separations. Jill Stevens will provide a lot of the detailed update, but I wanted to provide some opening remarks to you. We did receive some very disappointing news from Metrolinx as recently as last week that these were projects that had gone through a procurement process. You will recall that Infrastructure Ontario has been responsible for the delivery of the process through a design, build, finance option. We were informed that both of these projects are significantly over budget. In specifically, the Burloak grade separation is now estimated at $177 million. This is $117 million over the $60 million estimate that was in place. The town's financial commitment to the Burloak is 25% of a $60 million budget that was initially set, confirming a $15 million commitment that the town made to this project, and that has been incorporated, of course, into our budget process. Last week, Metrolinx informed us that ourselves, along with the City of Burlington, are required to come up with the additional funds to make up the full 25%. So that means an additional $30 million for the project, bringing our total cost on this at $45 million. They asked that we commit those funds prior to them. The Thursday we had met with them. They asked us to commit those funds prior to the finalization of their procurement process, which is today. Of course, town staff did not finalize the funding of an additional $30 million. That, of course, is a council decision that needs to come here. We also don't have a lot of information from Metrolinx on the details of the costing on the project itself in order to be able to legitimately recommend to you a commitment for those additional dollars. So we are hoping to receive some further information from Metrolinx over the next few weeks so that we can understand the full impact of the Burloak grade separation. The Kerr grade separation is a project that's now estimated at $233 million. It was originally, it's $128 million over budget. Its initial cost estimate was about $130 million. As a result of those significant cost overruns, Metrolinx has determined that they're deferring the project for an unlimited amount of time. So there's no specification in terms of the timing that they bring that project back. And they are looking at means to mitigate a level crossing in that location. As staff and council have indicated many times, a level crossing is really unacceptable in this location with the number of trains that cross through that tracks and the traffic itself, but predominantly the train traffic. It requires a grade separation, particularly if Metrolinx looks at the electrification along the GO line. So we have informed Metrolinx of the significant issue that this decision places on our community. The grade separation is really a critical component to move people throughout the town. It is necessary in a specific way to bring traffic from the Glen Abbey area down into the GO station itself. The unexpected cost increase from both the Burloak and ignoring the urgency of getting the Kerr Street grade separation raises a significant concern for us in terms of the transparency, the cooperation, the communication that we've had with Metrolinx in this very short while after several years of working with them quite closely in order to move these projects forward. So we are looking for more information from them. We don't have that right now in order to be able to come back to you with specific steps on how we need to move forward. So we hope to come back with those specific steps at a later date. So I did want Director Stevens to outline for you some of the history in the background. So that sets the context for where we are now and some of the questions that we have been asking of Metrolinx and where we go from here. So if I could turn it over to Jill Stevens.
Director Stevens, I wonder if you could include in your update the ranking of each of these in terms of how unsafe they are as level crossings. I understood that they're among the most dangerous level crossings in the province.
Thank you, Jane, and Mayor Burton, and members of council. We as staff have been working with the City of Burlington and Metrolinx for the past 6 years or so on the agreements for the Burloak grade separation, and for that same time period, we've been working with Metrolinx on the Kerr Street grade separation. That work has involved bi-weekly meetings with the team from Metrolinx, as well as additional meetings to address specific issues along the way. And we really have spent a lot of time and effort on this. The Burloak and Kerr grade separations were both identified as projects that needed to go forward. Through work that we had done as early as 1994, we completed a study with the City of Burlington for transportation needs in that area, and we also completed an EA for the Kerr Street grade separation in 2009. But as Mayor Burton alluded to, the Metrolinx has also done studies on all of the level crossings across their network, and these were two that were very highly rated in terms of needing to be looked at for the purposes of grade separation. As CAO closely mentioned, the Kerr and Burloak grade separation projects are really critical to mobility in Oakville. They're required to provide for safe travel for both road and rail travelers, for increased travel efficiency. And they also were providing the opportunity for us to increase our mobility through active transportation with additional sidewalks and bike lanes. And they're also an opportunity to reduce delays for our Oakville transit system, because we do have Oakville transit routes that use both of those level crossings today. With the electrification of the Lakeshore West GO line and all-day two-way 15-minute GO service, we will see up to 8 GO trains per hour using these crossings. As well, VIA and freight traffic do continue to use the crossings as well. If these areas were to remain as level crossings, with that increase in train traffic, there would be significant delays to the other kinds of traffic that are using that, the road-based traffic. So as was mentioned, on Thursday of last week, February the 24th, we did meet with Metrolink staff and received some limited information on both of the projects. So you've had a bit of an overview already of what we've heard. I'll provide a bit more context on that. I will say that we do still have a lot of information that we are seeking from Metrolinx. We have requested that. And once we have that, we will be able to review it and determine what the strategies are for moving forward. And we do plan to report back to Council with more fulsome reports likely at the April or May meeting. But I'll now move to a bit of an update on each of the grade separations and provide a bit of context on how we got here and where we are now. So Burl Oak, as you know, is a boundary road between the City of Burlington and Oakville. So any capital works that are done on that road are cost shared equally between the two of us. And we have been working cooperatively, as I've mentioned. We did a transportation planning study in EEA back in 1994. And the recommendations from that, including the grade separation, have been carried forward through our master planning since then. In 2015, the MP for Halton and the Minister of Transportation for Ontario announced joint funding for the Burl Oak grade separation. The project was to proceed as a design-build finance project under Infrastructure Ontario. And the expectation at that time was that the Burl Oak grade separation would be 100% funded by the provincial and federal governments. The federal share of that funding was to come from the Building Canada Fund, but the agreement was not put in place and executed before the federal election. So at this time, there's no federal cost share with this project. We've been proceeding with Metrolinx, Oakville, and Burlington as the cost-sharing partners. But since that announcement in 2015, we have been working with Metrolinx to bring the project to fruition. In 2017, Metrolinx updated the 1994 study, doing what's called we call a TPAP, or a transit project assessment process, which is similar to an EA that you would see for road projects. In April of 2018, Council approved the principles of the cost-sharing agreement with Metrolinx, including delegating the authority to enter into the cost-sharing agreements to staff. And at that time, it was expected that the RFP would be released in late spring of 2018. The agreements would be in place early in 2019, and construction on Burl Oak would start later in 2019. Construction was expected to take 2 years and be finished by the middle of 2021. Metrolinx did release the RFP in April of 2018, but multiple delays occurred along the way. And in December of 2020, we were advised that the financial closure was scheduled for August 2021 with an anticipated construction completion date in 2026. Throughout the process, staff continued to work with Metrolinx and cooperatively to move things forward and request updates. The RFP for the projects closed in June of 2021, and staff continued to request updates on the outcome of the RFP and the construction schedule. I think I neglected to mention off the top that the Burl Oak and Kerr grade separations were bundled together in a project that was called the Lakeshore West Infrastructure Improvements Project. So when I talk about the RFP, I'm talking about the RFP for multiple projects, but they do include those two key ones for us. We were aware that the bids had come in over budget, but we did not have any information on the magnitude of that financial pressure. Our contribution was essentially to be limited at $15 million, as CAO closely mentioned. So therefore, our expectation was that if there were additional costs, they would be covered by Metrolinx. And they continued to indicate that they were working on cost mitigation measures. Financial close was then pushed back again to February 2022, with track work starting this fall and the anticipated completion date being revised to mid-2027. When we met with Metrolinx in January of this year, they confirmed the financial close was set for February the 28th, which of course is today. We were unaware that there were any changes pending to the project scope or any pending requests for additional financial contribution. In terms of the project costs and cost sharing, in 2026, we were advised that Oakville would be required to cost share in the Burl Oak project. Metrolinx's share would be 50%, And the municipal share would be 50%, which would be split evenly between Oakville and Burlington, 25% each. In April, when we did that report to council on the cost sharing principles, our expected share was $13.5 million. But subsequent to that, the project cost estimate that we agreed to and have been working with ever since was $60 million, which then, as I mentioned, was $15 million as our share. And that project cost included land, design, construction, past costs that we had incurred for studies and things like that. So on last Thursday, February the 24th, just prior to financial close, we did receive the update on Burl Oak. As CAO closely mentioned, the cost came in at $177 million for the construction portion only, so that does not include all the other elements which we had included in the $60 million. We learned at that meeting that Metrolinx had revised the project cost estimate to $102.8 million during the RFP process, but we were not aware of that change until last week. So the recommendation from Metrolinx was, despite the increased cost and due to the importance of this project in maintaining and supporting the future rail traffic needs along the corridor, that the project proceed, and that the cost-sharing agreement, or the cost-sharing arrangement, I should say, of 50% Metrolinx and 50% with the municipal partners be maintained. Staff, of course, are unable to make a commitment like that without coming to council, but Metrolinx did indicate that if we were unable to meet that request for additional funds, that they would look to the Canadian Transportation Agency as a mechanism to resolve any cost-sharing disputes or to set a cost-sharing arrangement. They also advised that even without a financial agreement in place, they would sign the agreements to award the contract today, and those have been signed, and it's shown on Infrastructure Ontario's website. The Canadian Transportation Agency, or CTA, is an independent quasi-judicial tribunal and regulator, and among other responsibilities, they can issue legally binding decisions on cost-sharing responsibilities for grade separation projects. Each party's share would be determined by their role in driving the need for a grade separation. So if it's driven by train traffic, there is a share apportioned to that. If it's driven by rubber-tired vehicle traffic, that's taken into account as well. Under the CTA, Metrolinx is now classified as a railroad, and therefore their projects can be adjudicated by the CTA. So for the Burl Oak grade separation, the current status is that Metrolinx has signed the procurement agreement to allow the project to move forward, but the cost-sharing arrangement remains outstanding and needs to be finalized. This is a design-build finance project, and we expect to start seeing design drawings coming in within the next few months for review. And work will continue on the project until a determination about the financial contributions is confirmed. So the project is moving ahead. With respect to the Kerr grade separation, we've been working on this project since 2009. We completed an EA in that year and began work on the design of the grade separation in 2012. In 2016, the Kerr grade separation was included in that bundle of projects, the Lakeshore West infrastructure improvements, to be procured by Metrolinx and cost shared with Metrolinx and Oakville. Again, as with Burl Oak, we've been working together since that time on that. In that same report that I mentioned for Burl Oak, Council approved the cost-sharing principles for Kerr and delegated the authority to staff to enter into those grade separation agreements. At that point, our cost estimate was estimated at approximately $35 million plus 50% of the land costs. The RFP was to be released in spring of 2018, and it was, as I mentioned, in April, with construction starting in April 2020 and completion in 2023. In December of 2018, we provided a follow-up report through the Budget Committee on cost-sharing principles and updated costs. At that time, the costs had increased to $130 million. $90 million was essentially the construction and $40 million for land. But we also secured a $65 million cap on the town's costs. As with Burl Oak, there were a number of delays along the way that impacted the timeline for financial close and for construction. And as with Burl Oak, when the RFP closed in June of last year, we were aware that the bids had come in over budget, but we didn't know the magnitude of that cost pressure. But we did have that $65 million cap that had been agreed to, and so therefore our expectation was that the additional costs would be covered by Metrolinx. On Thursday of last week, in January, again, we asked for an update. We were told financial close would occur today, and we're not made aware that there were any changes pending to the project scope for Kerr. On Thursday last week, we were informed that the cost had come in at $233 million. And due to the significant increase in costs, Metrolinx had made the decision that the Kerr grade separation would be deferred and would not be included in the Lakeshore West infrastructure improvements project bundle that was awarded today. They felt that that cost was too high and not good value for the taxpayer. While the project's been said to be deferred, there is no timeline for when it will be reviewed again. So there essentially is no Kerr grade separation project on the books for Metrolinx at this time. Metrolinx has committed to looking at options to improve safety at the level crossing on Kerr, including upgrades to the crossing arms, upgrades to pavement markings, and other changes to deter trespassing onto the tracks. They have indicated that there will be a point at which a level crossing at Kerr is no longer feasible. The deferral of the Kerr project is new information to staff. We just learned last week, so we have very little information, but we have asked for additional information and analysis from Metrolinx. We will need to review that to look at options and strategies for how we move forward. Kerr Street and the grade separation are critical links. They provide access to the Kerr Village area. They connect our residents from different parts of town, from the Glen Abbey area to the GO station. We've got commercial and employment uses that are connected along there, and this is a secondary growth node. So mobility through that area is really, really key. So in terms of current status with Kerr, while the grade separation has been deferred indefinitely, we do have work to continue to do with Metrolinx to determine how we will wrap up certain items. There are a number of items that are in progress related to the grade separation work that we were doing to prepare for that, and we need to bring those to some sort of a conclusion or a point where they can be paused. We also need to review the implications to the other mobility improvements that we had planned for the area. As I mentioned, bike lanes and sidewalks are key components within the design for the grade separations, but also there were improvements at the intersection of Kerr and Spears, which we spoke about at the Planning and Development Committee meeting 2 weeks ago. So in summary, we've been working together on these projects for nearly 7 years now, and we've been placed in a very difficult position, and it's disappointing, as CAO Closey said, to be in the position that we are in today. We have requested that additional information. We will be reviewing that so that we can bring forward a strategy to council to determine how we move forward, and do plan to come forward in April or May with those next steps. So Mayor Burton, that really concludes my update for tonight. I'm happy to take questions. As the CAO closely mentioned, this information is still new, and we do have limited information, so we may not have all the answers tonight, but we are committed to coming back with follow-up reports, and any questions that we're not able to answer today, we will take back to include in those follow-up reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stevens. You have several questions. You've generated many questions. Councillor O'Meara is first.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Director Stevens, for the update. I'm wondering if it's possible, would you be able to just write a memo, sort of encapsulating the timelines and the stuff that you've said tonight, just so that we can all be singing from the same hymn sheet here as we move forward. If we could just get a timeline review as you just laid out for us, that would help a lot. as no doubt we'll have to communicate with all of our residents now who've been expecting this project for a number of years. And it'd be great to have that information. Can you just explain to me, because I think I heard you right, with regards to the Burl Oak, they're taking us to a commission or a body that is able to adjudicate how much we as a municipality are going to have to pay. Is that what I heard?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So right now, no. The Metrolinx has shared what the updated cost is and has requested that Oakville and Burlington pay 25% each of that increased cost. So that would be approximately 30 million more on top of the 15 million that we were expecting. But if that is not acceptable to the municipal partners, they've indicated that the CTA is an option that they could pursue to apportion the costs to each of the partners.
And Councillor, I'd like to supplement that answer. They haven't actually given us a written request for the money, and I'm not sure if, I mean, maybe it's the new way of business for Metrolinx to only speak to you verbally, but anyway, we haven't refused, and they haven't, in my opinion, officially asked. So there's a little bit of water to go over that dam before we get to that point.
Okay, but I am correct that they have closed on the whatever today was. They did close and they're moving forward with the Burl Oak. Now they're going to have to wait till they figure out the funding issue. Did I hear that correctly?
No, what you heard the director succinctly say is the project's going ahead. And the CTA process will be a way for them to recover from the municipalities whatever portion the CTA attributes to us.
Okay, I mean, that's what I thought I was asking. The first part of my question is that there's going to be some other body that's going to decide whether we have to pay the 45 million or less than that, but they'll be able to recuperate some way or how money from us as a municipality that we didn't think we were going to have to pay even 3 months ago.
Right, the project's going ahead, and we have an argument yet to face. So it's going ahead no matter what, as we understand it. And the bill will be settled later. Let's put it that way.
Okay, and then I know, Jill, I'm curious as to why a project that was supposed to take 2 years is now all of a sudden staring down the barrel of 5 years. Do we know what they added to that project to drag to more than double the length to get it finished from where it originally started out to be?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we are still requesting information from Metrolinx on that, and that's what we get. We will include in our updated report. The RFP process was a closed process, so we don't yet have all the details of all of the schedule components or the cost components.
Okay, I look forward to that information as well. And considering everything I've been reading in the news lately about how IO and Metrolinx have been operating with staff, I completely have lost all faith and confidence in that organization to run its affairs. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the additional information.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Jill. Jill, how much are we into the Kerr Street grade separation now? I know we've done some expropriation and land clearing and tree clearing and the cul-de-sac. What dollar amount are we tied to that at this point in time?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we've spent approximately 6.9 million on works that were to be credited back partially through the Kerr project.
So the question I ask, and maybe you don't have an answer for this, Jill, but the 6.9 million, and this has been deferred, and God knows when this will come back onto the table. That 6.9 million, is that a refundable from Metrolinx? This dollar amount coming back to the municipality?
Through you, Mayor Burton, that's an answer I need to come back to council with at a future time.
All right. Okay, and I echo Councilor O'Meara's comment to make sure we have the chronological order of events with respect to where we're at this point in time. I know with the Kerr Street grade, it's not just that alone in isolation. It's an integration with the Kerr, Spears Road and Kerr Street and the growth of Kerr Street, the comprehensive site plannings on where the northwest corner, which is a big part of the whole thing. So it's an integrated process, and it really is disappointing that this is going to be pulled or deferred to a certain time, and it might have a lot of impact in our development in that area. So at this point in time, we'll wait to see what comes back. I know we're into it financially, and I'm hoping if this will be deferred for a long time, something with the 6.9 million is kicked back to us with respect to our expenses at this point in time. But I don't know what the logistics, excuse me, what the legal ramifications is with that. So I'll just leave it as that. Jill, thanks very much. This is very, very disappointing in the amount of years we've been working on this and the impact it's going to have in our community. And I hope we can get this back on the table sometime in the very near future. So I'll just leave it as that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Director Stephen. There are a number of other projects being looked at. I don't mean to take away from the two we're discussing in any means. I'm just wondering, you talked about future discussions being held with Metrolinx. Would it be possible to get their view or outlook on a few others, such as Midtown? You know, we are at P&D, we're going to be seeing hundreds of stories of buildings that are coming through. We have one approved currently. We have another one coming, 3 further. I'd be very curious in terms of their outlook. I think a number of years ago, I think the amount was $167 million. If that's been updated and costing, and to see what level of commitment, if any, they have for Midtown.
Councillor, the CAO will take a first crack at answering your question, and I may add a few details depending on what she tells you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Burton. We've had actually quite a series of meetings with Metrolinx to deal with predominantly the GO station itself and how the GO station needs to be redesigned in order to accommodate bus traffic in there, better accommodate parking, accommodate some redevelopment on the lands that Metrolinx currently owns, all of which would deliver on the vision for Midtown. We have also had quite lengthy discussions with MTO at the technical level and at the political level on what, from a technical perspective, on the 2 interchanges, both at Trafalgar and Royal Windsor. Technically, they support those as being needed improvements. The question now is, how are they being funded? And so lots of those discussions are continuing with them. I would say that this development is with the Kerr and Bronte is very much reflective of the cost increases that we are seeing at this point in time. And so that's certainly what's driven this immediate decision. But these transportation improvements are absolutely essential for us to meet our planning requirements, both at the regional level as well at the town level. So those discussions are continuing with all those agencies in order to move the infrastructure forward that Oakville needs in order to deliver on the requirements in the growth plan and our own policies.
I thank you for the details. Has there been any sort of update in terms of the costing for the plans at Midtown? I know they aren't finalized yet, but the financing we have is 7-8 years old now at least. So I'm just wondering if Metrolinx is aware of that or the province.
So for our own capital budget, because we had added many of those projects, the Midtown projects, into the capital budget, we had redone the costing for all of the infrastructure projects within Midtown. So we have costing to 2021 currently right now. And we have shared those with those other agencies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you for the presentation. And from Councillor O'Meara's and my perspective, at least we know it's going forward at Pearl Oak, which will help with the growth in Bronte. There's two questions I have. Do we know when the 15-minute trains, when they project them to start running?
Through you, Mayor Burton, the electrification project is scheduled for 2025 implementation.
Okay, that's good to know. So we'll still be out by a couple years there. And do we know when the Wycroft Bridge extension should be finished?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I believe it is 2024 or early 2025 when that will be completed.
Okay, I just want to know how much pain we're going to go through with Lakeshore and Bronte before we get to that point where cars can redirect up there with our growth. But thank you very much for that information.
Well, the good news on the Wycroft extension is that it is not a Metrolinx, nor is it an Infrastructure Ontario project. It is a municipal project at the Halton level. And so far, Halton and Oakville, I will add, have a much better track record on actually bringing projects in on time and usually under budget, at or under budget. As for the estimate of when the electrification will be done, I believe it's possible that the public hearing this might conclude that a province that can't produce underpasses on budget and in time is unlikely to produce electrification of Lakeshore on time or on budget. And if you need any confidence in the likelihood that that's what people might think, just remember what's been going on with the LRTs. Councillor Adams, you're next.
Thank you very much. I wondered if staff could comment on the financing element with respect to development charges between the two projects. So I believe the two projects are 80% development charge funded projects, and therefore I wonder where it would leave us with respect to managing the relative costs of an increase in the Burloak if the Kerr Street wasn't there to be financed. It appears that we might be okay on the local municipal share, but I wonder where it would leave us with respect to the need to review and update our development charge studies and our ability to recoup those costs appropriately.
I know that Commissioner Sully is here as well. Through you, Mayor Burton, you're correct. It's 80% on the development charges. We are doing the technical update at this point in time. I think it's too soon to update the costs at this point in time. And I think a lot of the questions that you're asking are questions that we need to delve into a little bit further in terms of how we approach reflecting those costs, and if we reflect those costs given the status of where we are at this point in time and the options we have in front of us. So I'd actually ask if we could defer those questions to the report when we report back to you in April or May.
Yes, that was really my intent, was to ask you to come back with the details on those particular questions when you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton, to Director Stevens. Have you ever heard of flyovers? In Saudi Arabia, instead of going down under, they did flyovers. It was precast concrete, and it was done in a heartbeat. They'd have them done. Have you ever heard of that at all?
Through Mayor Burton, one of the options that was reviewed for the Burloak grade separation was an overpass. The there were a number of factors that led to this, the underpass being the preferred option. The visual impacts and the design elements of that were a key factor, especially for Burlington, who's got different land use on the west side of Burloak than we've got on the east side. Cost would have also been a factor. So it was reviewed for the Burloak one in particular in the 2017 study that was done.
What about for Kerr Street? When you think of all the people that come down from Glen Abbey to get to the GO train, was it looked at Kerr Street? Because the cost would probably be about not even 30% of what the other costs would be.
Through you, Mayor Burton, that's something we can report back on in the upcoming report. The EA did not need to be updated for Kerr Street as it did for Burloak, so we have not had to do a recent review of structural options. We went based on what was approved in the EA and what we had already started with on the design. So that screening was done, and we had gotten a fair bit along the way with our design exercise before we started to work with Metrolinx on the cost share.
Okay, but right now we don't have anything going on. Right now on Kerr Street, there's nothing on the books that's going to happen for sure, right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I look forward to something coming back on that because they do actually work. They may not be the prettiest in the world, but they actually do get the people where they want to go at a much less cost. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. I'm looking for a motion to receive the update. Councillor Chisholm, thank you for that. Any objection? There being none, that motion carries. We have no confidential discussion items. There are no advisory committee minutes, and a motion to rise and report to council would be in order. Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole met and made recommendations on consent items 7.1 to 7.5 and discussion items 9.1 to 9.5 as noted by the clerk. A mover and seconder for the report would be in order now. Councillor Lischina and Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, the report is adopted. Council, you have your information items which have been circulated electronically. And Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. I just have a quick question with respect to on the January 26th to February 1st council information items. There's an item with respect to a letter from the No Nuisance Noise Ontario group, and I wondered if staff have provided any information to that group, and if so, could they, with respect to our initiatives to deal with nuisance modified muffler vehicles and that sort of thing.
Through you, Mayor Burton, if Jim Barry is still on, actually, I know he has reviewed that material. If he's not still on, I will suggest that we'll take that under advisement and get in touch with them and provide any further information through council information if necessary.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Councillor Adams. It's always heartening to know that the information items are being looked at. You have your status of outstanding issues report as well. And we have quite a lot of new business this evening. And the first thing on new business is I'm happy to announce that both sides of the transit strike have agreed to meet again. And we therefore hope that a resolution to the strike can be found. Secondly, in order to consider some of these motions that are on the order paper tonight, which would make them timely, it would be in order to have a mover and seconder to waive the procedure bylaw provision of notice Councillor Sandhu and Councillor Longo, thank you. Is there any objection? There being none, the procedure bylaw notice requirement is waived. And the first item is the notice of a motion for the Bronte Harbor Navigational Beacon issue, which has been brought forward by Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Robertson. Councillor O'Meara?
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for waiving the procedure there on this issue. As some of you who might visit our piers would know, the Coast Guard in the past few years has been replacing the lighthouses as they were at the time with just little boxes with some navigational beacons on them. I guess that's as technology goes. You don't need an old person changing a light bulb every now and then anymore. You just need a navigational and a GPS signal. But as many of you know, our piers and our waterfront, their symbols and their gems and their things that go on our brochures and our ad campaigns and these sorts of things. So the former MP for Oakville, I know, worked closely with our council colleagues and the mayor a number of years ago when downtown Oakville's lighthouse was replaced, to ensure that there was a structure there that still had the symbolism and still had that touristy feel to it. So this notice of motion comes to request the same thing from our federal member and Minister of Defense right now, who's a little bit busy. But I can say I have heard, and Councillor Robertson and I have both heard from her office. She fully supports this. She's working to try and navigate the channels and make sure that this happens to Bronte as well as downtown. So I hope I could have all of your support and Councillor Robertson and I in bringing this forward and ensuring that Bronte Waterfront Harbor has the same sort of look and feel as it's come to be expected by many tourists, guests, and residents of Oakville. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Robertson?
I just want to thank Councillor O'Meara for starting this. I know that he is on the Visit Oakville committee, and those things are very important, those iconic pieces of what this town is. So I just, I know that you will support what makes Oakville wonderful and livable and meaningful for you. So thank you in advance.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robertson. May I put the vote? Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection to the resolution, it carries. Now, Council, the next item is the Town of Oakville resolution in support of Ukrainian sovereignty. And the mover is Councillor Natalia Lischina, who, as we all know, boasts of Ukrainian heritage, which I imagine her name itself would give away. But Councillor Lischina, as I recall your story, you came here as a wee child. So it's your motion. It's an honor and a privilege that you allowed me to second it, and I thank you for that. Councillor Lischina, please take the floor for your motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dear council colleagues, as I'm speaking to this motion right now, my family members and millions of innocent Ukrainians are taking cover in basements and bomb shelters in their homeland. And so it's with a heavy heart that I would like to read this motion to you, and thank you, Mayor Burton, for supporting it, and I hope that everyone else does as well. Whereas Ukraine and its people are facing an unprovoked and unjustified attack on their sovereignty, whereas Canada is home to the third largest Ukrainian population in the world outside of Ukraine, whereas Oakville has a large Ukrainian population and many of our community members have family and friends in Ukraine, whereas Town Council is distraught at the horrific scenes coming out of Ukraine, including images of families struggling and baseless violence, whereas Oakville stands with Ukraine and Ukrainian Canadian communities across the country to strongly condemn the unprovoked attack by the Putin regime. Therefore, be it resolved that Town Council supports the right of Ukrainian people to live in peaceful and a sovereign country. The Town Council supports the Government of Canada's economic sanctions imposed on Russia and the lethal, non-lethal, and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. The Town Council supports the Government of Ontario's humanitarian aid to Ukraine. The Town Council supports efforts by the international community to prevent the further escalation of hostilities against the people of Ukraine and its sovereignty. The Town Council requests that the Canadian federal government, along with the Ontario provincial government, welcome those fleeing the war into Canada and Ontario at an accelerated pace and continue to provide humanitarian assistance to the people of Ukraine. And that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Prime Minister of Canada, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of National Defence, the Minister of International Development, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, the Premier of Ontario, the Ontario Minister responsible for migration, Halton members of Parliament, Halton members of Provincial Parliament, Ambassador of Ukraine to Canada, the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Ontario Big City Mayor Caucus, as well as made available to the public. Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina. As I said, I wholeheartedly support this motion, and I would just like to add, for the benefit of the public, especially the Ukrainian members of our public, that tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning, we will be raising a Ukrainian flag on our 4th flagpole in front of Town Hall, which we might have done sooner, but we were only able to get one as of today, but we're now ready to do that tomorrow morning. And we will also feature information on how to make donations and other assistance to the people of the Ukraine in our nightly newsletter that comes out every night from the Office of Mayor and Council, and hopefully as well on the town's webpage. And with that, I'll recognize other speakers and hope for a unanimous and recorded vote. Councillor Adams, Councillor Longo, and Councillor Elgar. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Your Worship. You've already asked for a recorded vote, and I was going to suggest that we have a recorded vote. I have no doubt that this will be a unanimous resolution of council. I am horrified by the news I continue to see and watch coming out of Ukraine. It's completely despicable what's occurring there. My own family long ago came to Canada as a result of the effects of the Second World War. And so my heart is with every member of the Ukrainian community, whether they're in Ukraine or they are in Canada or in some other country. Watching your country be destroyed in the way it's being destroyed is shocking. And I can only say I'm so sorry to see what's going on. So thank you very much.
Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. I sat in disbelief as I watched Russia's invasion of Ukraine last week. Russia's unprovoked and illegal invasion of a peaceful country cannot go unpunished. We need to work as Canadians with our allies and the other countries throughout the world to condemn this vicious invasion and support Ukraine in the defense of their country. Tonight, we hold our families tight and we stand in solidarity with the struggles of the Ukrainian people. Their fight is our fight. God bless the people of Ukraine, and I completely and fully support Councillor Lischina and Mayor Burton's motion this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton, to Councillor Lischina. Councillor Lischina, I would appreciate if you could tell us where that you think people should put their funds. I sent it out Friday night. The Canada-Ukraine Foundation is one of them. Would you recommend that one, the Red Cross? Which one would you recommend? You would be much closer to it than me.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. You're so right about the humanitarian crisis that's happening in Ukraine right now and getting worse every day. The Canada-Ukraine Foundation is the closest organization that has dealt with these types of crises in the past. And so they are a very, very good place to donate. It's actually cufoundation.ca/donate. The Canadian Red Cross Ukraine Humanitarian Crisis Appeal is currently also an active site, and the federal government will match up to $10 million for all the donations. There's also Save the Children organization, again, directly to assistance to Ukrainian children. And so any of these would be a very good place to donate. Thank you so much for asking.
Well, no, I appreciate it, and getting it televised on TV of what you're recommending also, because if he wins the Ukraine, he will not stop. He'll take on the Baltics next, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. This man has to be stopped. So anything we can do, I appreciate it. And thank you for bringing the motion forward this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. I do want to state one more thing. As you know, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union and was called the Ukraine at that time as one of the states of it. It is now independent and free and will continue to be with, as you know, Ukrainian army is brave and courageous, and the civilians have joined in absolutely throughout Ukraine to help. And so I have no doubt that it will continue to stay free and a democratic country. So please just refer to Ukraine. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina. Councillor Lischina, the federal government offer to match, does that apply to all three of the charities that you mentioned?
No, thank you for asking, Mayor Burton. It's strictly to the Red Cross donation. I believe the Ukraine Humanitarian Crisis Appeal. The other organizations are, they have a lower administrative fee. So the Canada-Ukraine Foundation, all the funds are going directly. And in fact, the first shipment of humanitarian aid of $500,000 went this week already. So that money is being used as it comes in. And as I said, the organization has a long history working with Ukraine, and since 2014 when Putin invaded at the time. So I would highly recommend Canada-Ukraine Foundation.
Your recommendation carries weight with me. Thank you very much. Councillor Knoll, and then back to Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to draw to everybody's attention the St. Joseph's Ukrainian Catholic Church congregation, which is we proudly host in Ward 5. They've been collecting supplies and are shipping them over to Ukraine, including diapers and a whole range of other things. I just received a notice actually from them during the meeting that their containers are actually full. So they've asked that members of the public not supply any more donations at this time. They will let people know when they are going to ship another container. The other thing I wanted to mention on their behalf is that at this very moment, actually, there is a prayer service taking place at St. Joseph's, as I imagine other Ukrainian congregations as well. I mentioned St. Joseph's just because I do have a connection to them. I know so many of the members of that church. And they have reached out to me a few times to ask me to communicate some information. And one of them is that they're holding a prayer service. It's on live and virtual right now. And I believe there's a schedule on their website for prayer services that are taking place going forward. So if you are so inclined, I would encourage you to check out the prayer services at the St. Joseph Ukrainian Catholic Church at 300 River Oaks Boulevard here in Oakville. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. All right, Council, may I put the vote? Thank you. Is there any objection to the resolution? Madam Clerk, I see none. Please record this as a recorded vote, listing our names. And that way we'll have the unanimity emblazoned in our minutes. Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank every council member of the town of Oakville and every person who sent messages of support. from our community. It was also an interesting thing that I read today that there's a municipal council near Moscow who has actually put a resolution like this, basically telling Putin that he's wrong and that he shouldn't do this, and that he needs to stop this war. So I think you know, our voices are so important in all of you know, condemning all of this. And I think you know, I appreciate the big city mayors, but I hope that every municipality does this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Our next item is a notice of a motion by Councillor Haslett-Deal, seconded by Councillor Giddings, to bring site plan control to council on the application, the site plan applications for 560 and 772 Winston Churchill. This is essentially a routine matter in that council delegated site plan approval to the planning director with the proviso that for items of significant public interest, council could bring it back to council. Councillor Haslett-Deal, did you want to say anything about this?
No, I guess I just add that I'd look to my council colleagues to enable the public to have your ear. It is a circumstance where there's development that borders sensitive land use, and the opportunity to be heard and to get your perspective and to ensure a comprehensive review of the matter is done, I think is something that we hold near and dear as council members, that we stand as a community for public input and public consultation and helping the public understand what can often be very complicated. So I'd hope you support bringing it to council to be to receive the report and enable the public to be heard.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giddings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I concur with Councillor Haslett-Deal. Site plan control may be a routine matter, but it does become significant when it may be two properties, but it's a number of separate buildings on those properties, and it's directly adjacent to another municipality that is going through a very strong densification, if I can say that, in terms of industrial and commercial property. So it does have some wide-ranging effects to our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Yes, it is important that council be able to show the public that the appropriate mitigations that site plan control exists for are in fact provided. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and therefore that motion carries. Thank you, Council. Next on the agenda is the section Regional Reports and Question Period regarding town boards and advisory committees. And I have nothing, I have no detail to provide for the March meeting of the Regional Council because I'm not, I haven't seen the agenda yet, but it will be published on halton.ca, and I urge every member of council, not a member of the Regional Council, to take a minute to look at that when it comes out, possibly in the next few days. Now we come to requests for reports, but I'm not aware of any. I'll just poll the council for a second here. All right. Then it would be in order for a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Haslett-Deal, thank you very much. Is there any objection? There being no objection, the bylaws as listed in the agenda are considered and read. And I want to thank you for your time and attention. You've been terrific to work with, and that is the end of this meeting.